Welcome to Rex Arthur TV. This is the Rex Arthur Show where we discuss LGBTQ issues with an LGBTQ approach and an LGBTQ perspective in an LGBTQ plus planet where each of us belongs to one or two letters in the 10-letter sexual alphabet LGBTQIAAP. And today we are going on with our series of eunuchs, and that's the Hijras, the third sex. But last time we looked at Hijras in Hinduism and a bit of the other religions, and today we're going to look at Islam. Now, Islam also has eunuchs, and we are going to read different websites to see their views. So we can start with this one. Eunuchs in pre-modern Islamic law. Let's see how it's gonna come. So in this website, Eunuchs in pre-modern Islamic law, it is by Serena Tolino of Zurich University. Very good. So that if you need the person, you can contact them there. So changing what has been created by God is strictly forbidden in Islamic law. Indeed, verse 30 of the Quran states, "So direct your face toward the religion inclining to truth, adhere to fitrah of Allah, upon which He has created all people. No change should there be in the creation of Allah. That is correct religion, but most of the people do not know." Consequently, castration is absolutely forbidden in Islamic law. Absolutely forbidden. Though many eunuchs populated Islamic courts in pre-modern times. How could this happen? The first point to be mentioned is that the eunuchs were probably castrated outside the Islamic world where Islamic law did not apply. Moreover, even the Prophet Muhammad himself is said to have accepted a eunuch as a gift. Therefore, Muslim jurists simply took them for granted. They are in Arabic different terms to identify a castrated man, which are consequence of the modalities of castration. The term kasi is used to describe a man whose testicles have been cut. The term majbub, a man whose penis has been cut, and the term mamsu, a man without both. Clearly, the operation had fundamental impact not only on the gender, but also somehow on the sex of the eunuch. You see, very beautiful statement by this writer. Okay, let's pause there. And of course, Islamic law absolutely forbids castration. But Christian law and maybe Judaism, though Judaism it's a bit different, but Christian law, because why I'm saying Judaism is different, there is no really they never really show any practice of castration, but there was something that happened in in Judaism, and it is that eunuchs were also born. You know, the children who are born with the testicles, they are not descended, and sometimes they didn't know what to do. So, and then, however, I can say Judaism really, they also castrated males because castration was a practice of their neighbors. You know, Babylon and Persia and all of these. And they also castrated. Jews also castrated because they said that if a man is crushed on the stones, he should not be able to appear before God. And so I think that is what you should understand. Judaism had castration, and it was not really forbidden. The only thing that was forbidden was that the castrated man was not allowed in the presence of God, was not allowed to go and to the temple. But Christianity changed that with Jesus Christ. This is why some people think Jesus went to India, because it's India, but some people say he went to India after his ascension. Before he ascended. But I highly doubt. I would think that Jesus just had contact with India or Persia or one of these ancient empires, and he allowed eunuchs, he allowed castration. And he said, there are some who are born castrated, there are some who castrate themselves, there are some who are castrated, and all of these people, if they do it to serve the kingdom of God, then it's okay. He has no problem with that. So Jesus Christ, as a teacher, does not mind having eunuchs. And as I've told you in the Bible, many eunuchs wrote the Bible. And I have a feeling, and like Daniel was a eunuch, Mordecai could have been a eunuch. All of these people could have been. And then you have the Ethiopian eunuchs. So what does this tell you? Ethiopians also had the castration system, and not only that, they had castrated men, in people who are born castrated. You're a born Hijra. So it's very interesting that Islam really forbade it. But I love this, what is written here. Despite the prohibition, eunuchs populated Islamic courts. So now the writer is explaining how this happened, and they have given a nice diversity of eunuchs. They are diverse eunuchs. They are eunuchs who are, they have only their testicles cut. Then there are those whose penis has been cut, and a mamsu, which means both of they cut the testicles and the penis. So you see that one, when you become a mamsu, it means you don't even know whether you are a man. You can't be called a man. But the problem of sexual organs, the complication of the sexual organs is that the sexual organs are controlled by also internal organs. They control them. So even if you chop them off, you will still leave the wires that are connected to the internal sex organs. That's what people need to understand. Now, let's go on. Clearly, the operation had a fundamental impact not only on the gender, but also somehow on the sex of the eunuch. How were they for eunuchs gendered in Islamic law? If we want to understand that, it's necessary to start with a basic assumption. Islamic law does not aim at being an egalitarian system of law, but assume differences between people. The perfect and the complete subject of law, the civis optimo iure, we could say, was man, adult, Muslim, and free. Most eunuchs were slaves and not Muslims. Yeah, so you see, Islamic law was not egalitarian. It was not we the people. It was basically the man that was to keep the law. Not even women were not valued to keep the law because they were seen as chattel. They were property. So they were not obligated to keep the law. And so because of that, eunuchs were slaves. They were not considered humans. So this is according to the famous jurist Al-Shafid, if the eunuch, either completely castrated or not, marries, and if the wife knows that he's a eunuch and accepts that, then the marriage is completely valid. If he's able to penetrate her, then he's considered exactly as a non-castrated man. However, if a woman complains that her husband is not able to penetrate her, then the judge should grant the eunuch 1 year of time, a jail, to satisfy her. If during that year he's not able to penetrate her at least once, the marriage is nullified. But if a man can marry, he can divorce as well. In Islamic law, there are different types of divorces, talaq and kul. Talaq, of course, the man calls, cancels, and then kul. I have not known about kul. And they get divorced through compensation. So kul is divorce through compensation. So eunuchs were guardians of harems, and this is what I was trying to look at, and then we will leave. We'll go to another article. The name for the eunuch is Mukhannath, and we should jump out of the constraints that a binary system imposes on us, which does not necessarily means that we should add a third gender to this binary. However, in my view, we can add a third gender because that's what it was in India. It is in India. Hijras are a third sex for one reason. They don't know where they lie. A Hijra can have a penis and dresses like a woman. Yes. So what do you call that person? You see? You don't know what to call them, whether you call them a man or a woman. Like in India, most Hijras, they will never even wear men's clothing. But they have a penis. And they engage in anal sex. So what do you call them? You see? So what India did, they called them the third sex. But in Islam, they just gave them the name Mukhannath. But it was not a third sex identity. It was just identifying a type of man, that they are castrated men and they are non-castrated men. All right. Okay, we're done with that one. Let's go to another one. Eunuchs and Gilman in the Islamic Empire. One of the first things we learn of when we study history books is the British Empire and the heinous atrocities committed in the course of the British Empire colonizing faraway lands, people, and cultures. We learn about the Aboriginal people of Canada, Australia, and America who were brutally forced to give up their cultures, religions, names, vast resources, and indigenous identities. Okay, this is a very long article. One of the reasons why slave trade is considered a extremely contemptible practice in the modern world is, aside from its obvious dehumanization of social status, it immediately relegates its victims to and the curbing of natural human rights. It ushers in contemptible social ills such as sex trafficking and male castration on a grand commercial scale. The unprecedented pan-continental economic success of raiding infidel communities and enslaving war captives was exclusive to Islamic culture under the Islamic Empire, naturally gave way to the demand for eunuchs. Eunuchs were preferred male slave choices for consumers because they posed less security risks at the harems, in the palace, and in the domestic affairs of ordinary Muslims. Eunuchs were plentiful in the Islamic Empire. Muslim rulers who ruled under the authority of caliphs purchased and had slaves from Persia, the Indian subcontinent, Europe, Africa, and beyond, in vast quantities in their palaces. Ordinary Muslims outside the royal class also had male slaves who were castrated specially for their service. Many Islamic commentators, politicians, and scholars, ordinary Muslims, often argue that eunuchs predate Islam and the castration of slaves goes against Islamic doctrine, as Islam prohibits body mutilation. That's ironic because circumcision is allowed in Islam. So, no, I'm wondering what that is. It is true that castration of slaves is not an Islamic teaching, and that rather than engage in castrations themselves, Muslim merchants had other people to do it for them, discussed further below. It is also true that Greeks, for example, as well as other people outside of Arabia, were castrating slaves unjustly before the advent of Islam. Islam, however, does not view slavery or slave trade through an abominable lens as other legislature adopted by other cultures have come to. Muslims are encouraged to treat their slaves fairly and to go as far as manumitting them on certain occasions, but they are not once commanded to do so. There is also the instance of a Muslim being instructed to free a slave as punishment for Muslims. Involuntary manslaughter of another Muslim, not the kafir or slave, but for the most manumission in Islam, is something a Muslim should do if he only feels his heart to do it. That's a mouthful, but what we've got from it that's very important is Islam really banned castration. But are you noticing a funny trend with Islam? what they ban it, but they allow it. They do it. So it's like they don't really follow their law, because if you are strict, most secular states like the ancient Roman Empire, and before it became a Catholic empire, and then the Greek Empire, and then you have very many ancient empires, they followed laws. But Israel and the Arab world, they were really not keen to following the law, because the Torah in Israel was not kept. And in the Muslim world, you're already seeing castration was banned, but people were castrating because the economic success that came with castration was very lucrative, because people were using eunuchs for protecting the harems, and harems were places you would make money. Prostitution, they were brothels. So people would come and get ladies, and the eunuchs used to guard those houses, because if you don't guard them during, there was the environment was so warlike. So because of that, then because of the warlike nature of the environment, the men would attack where women were and go with them, because women used to be taken as captives, also to be sex slaves. So they went and did that in the Arab world. So to protect those women, they would hire eunuchs, because eunuchs could not sleep with the women, first of all, and secondly, they were like slaves to the masters. So they would protect the harems. Okay, let's see any other important discussion here. So eunuchs and Gilman, and this extremely dehumanizing and degrading aspect of Islamic slavery was the large-scale castration of male captives. It has received little attention of critics and historians. But Muslims normally engage Jews or non-Muslims to perform the operation on the argument that mutilation of human bodies was prohibited in Islam. So you see, Jews, as I said, Jews knew castration. They knew how to crush the stones. And also non-Muslims. But Muslims did not want to crush the stones, but they wanted the eunuchs. They needed them. Yes, this is hypocritical. Thank you. In the list, since beheading of totally innocent people in large numbers has been a common practice right from the days of the Prophet, while amputation of hands and legs are divine Islamic punishment for certain crimes. Yes, it's so hypocritical that they were using non-Muslims to castrate when the law says do not castrate. Then also they were beheading people during the wars of conversion, and when you steal, you chop your hands and legs. I mean, it's very sad punishment. We are in interfaith relations, so I am friends with Muslims, but because we are reforming religions, we also have to question the sad sides of religion. So this is one of the sad sides. Like, I don't believe you have to cut off somebody's hands because he has stolen. That's not my understanding of punishment of theft, because now you've basically killed the person. How will the person work to get money? When you've chopped off the hands, that's it. Why will you blame him? You've made him a beggar. So you'd rather tell him, I like the Jewish form of punishment, compensation, rather than chopping off the hands of the thief. Anyway, so that's what the Muslims do. So the writer of this article is very clear and very right to say it is hypocritical for them not to castrate, but to get castrated persons to do their job. But the employment of eunuchs is clearly sanctioned by Allah, as the Quran constructs women to cover their body and ornaments with the cloaks, except to their husbands or their fathers, or the fathers of their husbands, or their sons, or the sons of their husbands, or their brothers, or their brothers' sons, or their sisters' sons, or their women, or those whom their right hands possess, or the male servants not having need of women. So the eunuchs were the male servants who did not need to be with a woman. Now, Prophet Muhammad had himself accepted a eunuch as a gift, says hadith, which has been excluded from canonical collection. So they don't want you to know that the Prophet had a eunuch. So they've hidden that part. And we wonder, why did he have a eunuch? Could it be he was enjoying himself? Yes, it could. And it's not bad. I mean, it's not bad to enjoy a eunuch. Eunuchs can have sex. Gay sex is very easy with a eunuch. Yes, it's okay. So there is no problem with having sex with a eunuch. Even there are eunuchs who get married. Yes, they are there. Because you have to understand castration. It's diverse. There is chemical castration. There is physical castration. There is even emotional castration. There is even spiritual castration. There is even mental castration. Everything that exists, every concept in life has its diverse forms. Mental retardation, physical retardation, spiritual retardation, psychological retardation, economic retardation, economic stagnation, mental stagnation, physical, all of these things in English, all of these concepts, they have diversity, as we've said in our other video. Now, first, Muslim harems and households used to have a few to thousands of wives and concubines. You see, very common, like King Solomon. Are you seeing that households used to have thousands of wives? Yes, it's very true. And these days, in fact, these days Muslims don't have very many wives and concubines like the past. Yes, time has changed. Now economics is so important to people, they are not even thinking of having many wives. It's a burden, because you have to be very rich to have a big family. So these days, in the past, it was very easy for people to have 1,000 wives.